Hey everybody, and welcome back to another Max Velocity weather forecast. And in today's forecast, we'll be breaking down a big storm that is going to be coming to the United States next week. And this storm is going to bring a ton of different problems, including the threat of severe weather. This will be anywhere from the southern plains back into the Midwest and the Ohio Valley. In addition to this, there will be a chance for another winter storm in early April across areas like the upper Midwest and perhaps even in the Northeast. I'll be giving you the latest breakdown on everything that you need to know in this forecast, and let's hop right into what's happening right now across the country today. We will begin with this large storm that is circling back up in Canada. This low pressure system was the storm that brought severe weather to the southern and central plains on Sunday, also brought that significant tornado risk on Monday that didn't really even pan out. That low pressure system is beginning to move out of the United States, and what's interesting about this is that we actually have another area developing back down in the southeast and along the east coast, and this is actually going to be our next storm to watch for over the next 24 hours before most of it moves offshore. This will bring the chance for some isolated flash flooding in addition to a low-end threat of severe weather tonight and tomorrow, so something to watch for if you're right along the immediate east coast. Lots of thunderstorms right now just off the coast of Florida at the time I'm recording this forecast. That'll lead to some severe weather as we go later into tonight and maybe even into tomorrow morning. Back over in the central and southern plains, it's really quiet right now. You might think we're not going to see any severe weather over the next few days, right? Well, most of us won't. There's actually a low threat of severe weather tonight back over in parts of North Texas for a couple of isolated supercells that have produced the potential for some large hail and damaging winds, so that'll also be something to watch for there. And then back over on the west coast of the United States, a lot of cloud cover right now from an offshore disturbance, and though this offshore disturbance will not really impact most of the United States, areas in the west coast and as well as the Pacific Northwest we'll have some increased cloud cover, some rain, and even a little bit of snow in the higher elevations. We will get a little bit of this energy to come across the Rocky Mountains as we go closer to the weekend. That'll bring a small scale disturbance to areas in the central plains and the Midwest, but other than that, that is not going to be our large storm that'll impact the country early next week. All right, let's talk more about the weather pattern that'll be impacting the United States over the next week or two, and to look at that, we are going to look at the jet stream. The jet stream gives us an idea of the weather patterns that are happening across the United States, and as of right now, we do have that large-scale low-pressure system that's back up in Canada. The upper levels, it's just north of Wisconsin. Very strong jet stream, by the way. This is the upper level, so that jet stream, those winds are all in the upper levels, and if you're flying on an airplane, for example, this is where that turbulence is all located right now. It's all the way from Texas back onto the East Coast, all across the eastern seaboard. You're dealing with some turbulence if you plan on flying on an airplane today or tomorrow, so this is something to be monitoring, obviously, for those that are traveling. Once we go into Thursday into Friday, though, that low-pressure system will move to the north and east, and eventually as we go into Saturday, things will start to kind of dry out a little bit. I don't think we're gonna have anything too crazy for the weekend. We will have a small scale disturbance again moving across areas in the central plains back through the Midwest, but it's not going to be too impactful. By the time we go into Sunday, though, watch the west coast here. We're gonna have a large low pressure system back over on the west coast with a very strong jet stream, by the way, and this is going to be our next storm that's going to produce the potential for severe weather as we go into Monday and Tuesday of next week. Notice this on the jet stream as we go into Tuesday. Here's your low pressure system in the central plains. It ejects over the Rocky Mountains with a very strong southwesterly flow, and the reason why the southwesterly flow is important is because this helps to organize supercells across areas like the southern and central plains. That's why this is going to be important as we go into Tuesday and as well as Monday, by the way. Once we go into Wednesday and a Thursday, that large scale storm moves out, and by the tail end of next week, we'll likely be dealing with at least somewhat drier weather across most of the United States. Though there is not an official outlook for next week's severe weather threat by the Storm Prediction Center, there is an experimental tool that forecasts similar parameters, and this is called the CIPS. What this is essentially showing us is where we could see a severe weather threat next week, basically generalizing it as if it were a Storm Prediction Center forecast. And this is what this tool is showing us for Sunday in terms of a risk. Now, right now it shows areas like Missouri and back into the north central Texas area, western Oklahoma, pretty similar area to what we actually just saw this past Sunday, so almost identical risks overall. But what's interesting about this particular setup going into Sunday, and you'll see this in a moment, is that there may be a cap in place on Sunday, and this might last all day, and if that happens, we are likely not going to see storms fire up even in this area. But if there is not a cap, there will be a better shot of at least some severe weather, especially back over in western Oklahoma and back in areas like West Texas and perhaps even southern Kansas. I do think this risk that they do show back over in like Missouri, for example, is a slightly higher chance of happening. But even then, I do think overall the cap may be an issue, and the timing of this low pressure system is going to be very critical to this threat actually happening. So for Sunday, my confidence is very low on a severe weather threat, but on Monday, my confidence goes up drastically, and this goes anywhere from the Midwest back into the southern plains. I do think there'll be a better shot of severe weather here. Now, with all this being said, again, this is not an official forecast. This is just an experimental tool that is giving you an idea of where we might see severe weather on either day. I do think, though, overall that this is a pretty good highlighted area for where we will be seeing severe weather as we go into Monday across areas from the Midwest back into the southern plains. But with one exception, I wouldn't be surprised if we at least had a marginal or slight risk of severe weather back in areas like Ohio or Indiana. So that will be something to watch for. But again, we are still several days out, so make sure you're staying tuned. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. We'll be keeping you posted with the latest as we get closer. But with all that being said, let's actually look at the future radar and give you an idea of where I think the greatest threat of severe weather will be next week, what kind of severe weather we're talking about, and exactly where it's going to be happening here across the United States. We're going to first begin, though, with Thursday. This is where we're going to be watching for plenty of rain across the east coast of the United States. Some heavy rain will be possible back down in the Carolinas, even as far south as Florida. And then once we go into late Thursday into Friday, that disturbance moves offshore. We'll be dealing with mostly rain in the northeast going into Friday, really along the east coast. Notice one thing about this is that it is going to be a strong low pressure system, but the big thing with this is it's not going to bring any snow to areas in the northeast, because this is not going to really be a nor'easter. We're not going to be getting that snow effect that we would usually get in January, because the temperatures will just not be cold enough there. Once we go into late Friday into Saturday, high pressure dominates across the southern tier of the country. We will have a small disturbance move into the Midwest as we go into late Friday into Saturday. That'll bring a little bit of rainfall to areas in the Midwest and the Ohio Valley, in addition to a little bit of snow for those in northern Michigan, but overall nothing too crazy there, and as well as northern Wisconsin, by the way. And then once we go into late Saturday night to Sunday, that starts to weaken out, and by the time we go into late Sunday into Monday, we will be watching for this next large storm to develop across the Rocky Mountains. Once this ejects over the Rocky Mountains and moves into the Central Plains, we'll be watching for a lot of different things as we go into Monday into Tuesday. The first thing will be the chance for some snow across the northern plains in the Midwest. This could be, again, another winter storm for some areas. Once we go into late Monday evening into Tuesday, that is when we'll be watching for severe weather across parts of the southern and central plains. The area that I think will have the greatest concern Monday afternoon and evening will include areas from western Oklahoma and north central Texas back into western Arkansas. I do think this black circle at least gives you a good idea of where I do think that greatest threat of severe weather will be. The problem, though, right now with this particular setup would be the moisture, and this is something that we've had a problem with the last couple of severe weather setups, and really particularly talking about what we just saw on Sunday and Monday. We didn't have a whole lot of moisture on Sunday. Monday was a little bit better, but the mid-level moisture was really struggling, which is why those supercells that did end up developing were just so close to the ground. We didn't have much moisture in that setup, and then back on Sunday when we had the severe weather in the central and southern plains, the dew points barely got to 55 in most areas, and really a favorable environment would be dew points above 60 degrees, and we just didn't really have that this past weekend. We might have that next week, but it's still very uncertain, which is why there is not a current risk outlook from the Storm Prediction Center. In addition to that, there are some other concerns, like will there be enough instability? I do think there will be, by the way. With all that being said, again, there is definitely still some uncertainty with this event. Another area that I would watch for, though, would be areas in the Midwest and back through the Ohio Valley. There will likely at least be some level of severe weather here, whether it's a low risk or a low to medium risk. It is going to be something to watch for on Monday. By the time we go into Tuesday, we'll be watching for some showers and heavy downpours across the Ohio Valley and the Northeast. There will be another shot of severe weather on Tuesday, most likely, for those back into areas like Kentucky, West Virginia, and back into Tennessee and Alabama. And really, depending on the moisture and as well as the instability in the low-level jet for Tuesday evening, I would not rule out there being a potential for a slightly more elevated risk of severe weather from about West Virginia, Kentucky, and Tennessee back down into Alabama and Mississippi. So we will need to watch that closely. And by the time we go into late Tuesday into Wednesday, this all moves to the east. The chance for a winter storm does exist in the Northeast, but obviously right now we are still several days out and things could easily change. Here's the instability, by the way, as we go into Saturday. So there will be some instability in the southern plains, but I don't really think we'll see any severe weather on Saturday. Slightly better chance of severe weather on Sunday, but I do think there is going to be a cap in place, which may have that being a bit more of a struggle for severe weather to develop. Once we go into Monday, though, into Tuesday, that is when a greater chance of severe weather will exist. This is Monday afternoon. Plenty of instability instability in the atmosphere, which is basically like gasoline for a vehicle, but in this sense, it's what's fueling severe weather and severe storms. Once we go into Tuesday, that instability moves to the east, and we'll be eventually watching for at least some level of severe weather across areas like the Ohio Valley and back into the southeast as we go into Tuesday, and then by Wednesday, this all moves out. In terms of snowfall, who will see snow? Well, it still remains very uncertain, but this gives us an idea of who could see greater than 1 inch of snow over a 24-hour period. This is what we're talking about on Tuesday. Many areas right now, even in the Midwest, ranging from 5 to 10%. Highest areas like northern Wisconsin have about a 40% chance of seeing greater than 1 inch of snowfall. So again, relatively low chances for now, but this could very well change as we get closer. And by Wednesday, better shot of snow across areas like New England, near a 60 to 70% chance in the higher elevations of New Hampshire as we go into Wednesday. So definitely going to be something to watch for if you're back up in the Northeast. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. We'll be keeping you posted with the latest as all of this evolves.